Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue what we're calling the Groovy Horror Retrospective, a look at classic horror of the 60s and 70s with the 1970 vampire movie Count Yorga Vampire, a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psychom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
Well, for the remainder of talking about Yorga, I want to be known as Count Drew instead of Mr. Drew. I want to say that.
You need that skunk stripe going straight over. All right, and also, finally, joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Count Yorga Vampire, also known as The Loves of Count Yorga, which is actually what it said on the print that I saw.
That was its softcore porn name before it became a...
The Loves of Count Yorga Vampire is a 1970 American vampire horror film directed by Bob Keldon and starring Robert Corey. It's followed by a sequel, The Return of Count Yorga. Count Yorga is arguably the first modern film adaptation of a vampire character as living in the 20th century. So, let's get our opening thoughts. I know that we're all excited to be watching this movie. I have been working out childhood issues watching this movie. So let's go. Drew, I don't think we've started with you in a couple weeks, so let's go Drew, Tony, Julia, and then I'll say something. So opening thoughts, Count Yorga.
I have a lot of fond memories of this movie. I did not see it till I was fresh. I'd always heard a lot about it from other horror fans, but I never actually saw it till I was fresh out of high school and living with Dallas, and there was a girl that I was dating at the time who worked at this place called Stage and Screen, which had all these movie memorabilia and all these obscure movie titles and everything that you could rent out and everything. And I went over to her house one night, and I watched Count Yorga and The Return of Count Yorga back to back. It was a really good kick in the pants, and I just think this is a really, really fun movie, and Robert Quarry is got to be one of the best screen vampires of all time. I mean, he's like James Bond, Hugh Hefner, and Christopher Lee all rolled into one. He's so slick.
There really is some Hefner here, too.
Oh, totally Hugh Hefner, especially the wardrobe. If you look at how Hugh Hefner was dressing at this point in time, Count Yorga definitely curbs some. And a little Dean Martin too. Like there's some early '70s Dean Martin-ishness to him as well. But he's very suave and he's very dapper. Yet at the same time, he is evil incarnate. And I think Tony responds to that in a lot of a much similar fashion. I think these are really fun movies, and I'm excited to be talking about them.
All right, outstanding. Tony, opening thoughts. Do you have anything to add to that? Count Yorga Vampire.
Oh, yeah, I really like this movie. I like that Count Yorga is back to the original kind of evil, he's one of the few Draculas, or Dracula kind of things that goes back to the original Dracula. I didn't see this until recently, actually, because I was like, Yorga, what kind of vampire? I don't know about this. I just kind of blew it off, and I'm really sad that I did that because this is one of my new favorite vampire performances. He doesn't care about, he's timeless. So he just kind of, whenever he wakes up in a time, he just kind of inserts himself and does exactly what what a lord would do. He's like, okay, well, there's no wasted time of him going, oh, what is this strange mechanical carriage? Right. That crap. It's just like, okay, how do I find chicks and how can I find their boyfriends and put them down, make them look bad. And I'm just going to, do what I do. I'm going to hang out like I always do and take advantage of people and drink blood. And that's what I do. And it's great. The way he does it is awesome. I mean, if you're going to have a vampire, there's none of the, pining over lost loves.
No.
He doesn't have a TV downstairs. He just commands his, lesbian harem, you get it on with her. All right, now we're talking. This is what I do. It's just awesome. He doesn't even have a TV. I think he does in the second one, but he doesn't even have one in the original. He's just you do that. Yes, it is good to be a count. I'm so happy. It doesn't matter what time it is. This is what I do. It's awesome.
He's a pretty bitchin' zombie sidekick, too.
Oh,
yeah,
that guy. I also, love how that guy, he gets muscle that's truly muscle.
Yeah.
That guy breaks a guy in half on command later on.
God, yeah, that's
he's
right.
Whoa, forget this Renfield, kind of cowering. He's hey, go do some stuff. Steal a van, break some people in half. I hired you. You're my thrall. Here, do this. And the guy,
I was reading that there's some question as to whether that guy might be a werewolf or not. His assistant.
He seems more zombie to me.
Well, because at some point they hear, there's a wolf kind of in the distance, and then also when they said, "Do you believe in werewolves?" he said yes, and they showed that guy. So I don't know. And plus, he kind of looks a little wolfy. I don't know.
Yeah, but the way he stumbles around and the general disheveledness of him, I always think of him as a zombie.
Do you mean zombie in the sense of a dead person or a person who's been brain damaged and made to do your will, like a Haitian zombie style?
Well, he seems to have a very high level of durability compared to normal people. So I don't know that he's undead in the same way Yorga is, but he's definitely not a normal human being.
Right, and he has free will. I mean, he's a rapist, and for instance, he attacks Donna later on. So I don't know. He's a minion. I mean, he's an Igor-style minion. It's just I think Tony's right that he's more active than we generally see. He's really pretty ruthless. Yeah. Oh, Julia. Well, lay it on us. What are your thoughts on Count Yorga? I'm curious whether you've ever seen this film before.
No. No. I think he's really sexy. I think the blue eyes and He could
see. He totally had that effect.
He can
Look at that.
Drink my blood anytime.
All right.
But
exactly what he does.
Yeah, but we were wondering how it is that he came to be part of their lives. How it is that he came to be dating the mom, quote unquote.
Yes.
He's he's like mom's boyfriend, which I'm just really, does he have? Is he a boyfriend type? I mean, he seems more of the love him and leave him and dead type, really.
Well, she doesn't know. I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, when we first meet them, he's hanging out with them. He's doing a seance for them with these groovy kids, young people, 20-somethings.
And presumably he killed the mom. I mean,
right. Well, and then after he leaves the party, after he's a big hit at the party, they're all how do you know him again? And nobody really knows him. And she's he dated my mom.
Oh, that's right. The mom turns up later. I forgot. Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all right. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, it's interesting. I mean, it's not my favorite of the vampire movies that we've seen, but it has moments.
Very cool. Okay, my just quick thought is that if you're listening to this and you've never seen Count Yorga Vampire, it is available all over the place in various ways. It just dropped off of Netflix, but you can rent it on Google Play and you can rent it on YouTube, and you can find it on DVD 500,000 times. So it's not like this movie is unknown. This is not as difficult as Blood and Roses or whatever. It's a low budget picture. And yet, it handles its low budget extraordinarily well. And the main reason is the discovery of this actor, Robert Quarry, playing Count Yorga he is just the shit. I mean, this guy, Robert Quarry, he's clever, he's funny, he's confident. The movie is really, sometimes the dialogue's a little heavy-handed, but generally the movie's really smart in how it handles a bunch of people talking about, the problem of having a vampire running around in a world where they don't believe in vampires. And I should point out, last thing, first of all, I have, since I was a child, had a desperate fear, like a weird, just phobia of faces in windows. Okay, I'm afraid of like faces in windows. So if somebody like sticks their head in the window and goes, that's really, really phobic, scary to me. And I do remember that I watched this movie when I was about 6 years old in Irving, Texas, and I remember very much the face in the window. Now that I watch it again, I remember the face in the window that happens in one scene in a van, and also I remember the lady. I won't even spoil the scene because we'll get to it later. But I mean, I watched this movie on television at about 6, and it freaked me out, and it affected me forever. So, and I also realize now that a lot of my own ideas about how bad guys should have panache links back very much to this. So there's a lot of good stuff here to talk about. So,
but we Tony and I had an excellent conversation going on Facebook earlier about the idea of the romantic vampire and the sexy vampire, and I think a lot of people when they think of these, and even Julia had kind of a certain level of being drawn towards this character.
Sure.
He isn't romantic. People, I think, confuse the idea a lot of regal and suave and dapper with romantic, and that's going all the way back to Bela Lugosi, who also isn't particularly emotionally attached to his victims.
Yeah,
and this is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, he does what he does.
Yeah,
like people think because it said Bram Stoker's Dracula in that particular movie that for some reason that none of that's in the book. Like,
right.
Not one. Somebody was like, "Hey, that wasn't in the book." Oh, the movie. I'm like, no, the Lugosi Dracula is way closer to.
Well, in
to
terms
what,
of that idea, the romantic thing, the idea of Dracula falling in love with a girl,
a lost love,
reincarnation
no less.
thing.
Yeah, that's BS. It's not in this. I mean, it's not BS. It works in those movies, but it's not in the book, and it's not the original kind of Dracula that that we get from that particular book.
And would you agree?
It's kind of interesting, but like this guy, he's the Dracula. Like again, he's timeless, so he just does. I'm kind of interested in what Count Yorga. I guess he's supposed to be Dracula, but let's say he's not Dracula. There actually exists another Dracula. I'm kind of curious what Count Yorga's deal was back in the day. Like, how did he become a vampire?
Yeah.
That same kind of deal. Because what I love. I still, like I said before, I love that he just kind of does what he does. He has this regal air, and he has such awesome contempt for people, for like anyone below him, and it's just awesome. And he just comes into a thing. He bewitches all the females around him.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem to work. I guess he's not really trying, but it also doesn't really seem to work on the guys. But he's great about just like putting them down.
I don't think he
what I always consider like the thing where he would definitely go like, "Oh, hi John. Oh no, its name is Jim. Okay, John, thanks." Like,
right.
Where he's totally that kind of passive aggressive, but he doesn't even do that. He just kind of rolls his eyes like, "Whatever, you're not Count Yorga."
I really think that he could bewitch males if he wanted to, but I think he enjoys the zany cruelty of bewitching the females and getting them to come to him so that he can destroy them. And then, and at the same time, he leaves the males to completely be aware of what's going on as he just sort of runs logical circles around them.
Well, that's also kind of cribbed from the original Dracula novel. There is this vampire, this foreigner who has come into our lives, and there's this crew of guys that are trying to figure things out and save all their lady friends. And they're led by a slightly, in this case, slightly older, in the novel older, but knowledgeable doctor who's trying to guide them into the pseudo-scientific world of vampire hunting. And this movie actually follows, again, a lot of the aspects of the Dracula novel a lot better than some movies that are outright about the character of Dracula.
I think this is a Dracula adaptation. I mean, I think basically, you know, when you consider that Hammer was doing its gothic Dracula thing and then did Dracula AD 1972, like 2 years after this is a hell of a lot better at being bring Dracula into the modern day. You know, because think about it. This is a cheap movie. Hammer could have done this with Christopher Lee and never could get their act together as to how exactly they were going to bring
also, you know, sorry. Funny that you mention that, because like one of our guests in the chat room also brings up like the colors in this film and how great they are. I mean, it does have that Hammer palette, and even some of the sets, like especially his like throne room, where he's, you know, gets to be he's got a throne room. I mean, I love it. He goes to like California, he sets up a basement throne room, and that's where he's like super gangster. You know,
well, that throne room,
you do stuff for my amusement.
By the way, the throne room to me looks
great.
like so he occupies a mansion that it's in the dark most of the time, so don't get a really good look at it. But it's a mansion in California. I did not find online where this house is they're filming, but it's clearly a practical house. It's got lots of adobe. It's awesome. It's a beautiful, like, Spanish-style house. And it has, I think this is a wine cellar. I believe that his throne room is a converted wine cellar, converted in as much as he's removed the wine, and he's put in some, like, altars for these chicks to lay on, and he's got a throne, you know, and he's got some torches. And it's great. I mean, I was just truly, truly amazed, and I love, he goes down there, and for his amusement, he makes the vampire brides make out with one another, though that actually happens totally off-scene in the version of the film that I saw.
Yeah, vampire women are slobs, number one.
Oh, yes.
They're kitten eaters.
No. Okay. Do you want to get
that's
to
the second one.
Right. So they getting away from the weird cat thing for just a second.
Yeah.
They in fact, why don't we start with like what goes on in the plot here? Because, and you're right that the women who turn into vampires are not at all like Count Yorga. All of them that he converts, he is the smart one, and it's like all of his vampire minions that he creates are all practically like rage-filled zombies. You know, who that's the best thing about it. When he sicks his vampires on them, they just run full speed at you, and it's really unnerving because the door will open and here they come, you know, and it's really crazy. And actually, he'll do that too, because all of a sudden there's no Yorga, nothing's going on, and all of a sudden, just like Leatherface coming out with a big hammer, here he comes, just running straight at you. You know,
well, I kept calling that because I kept calling that the run and choke attack, because that's literally what he does.
He uses that like the force choke in Star Wars. Like, I just imagine like back in the day when he was a real count, like people were like, "Don't make him mad. If you see him running, that's it." Like, you know, some night, like, "Excuse me, Count, but do you think this strategy will not work?" Yeah! And he just like runs at him and chokes him. You're like, "Oh no, you should have never spoken."
Yeah,
I just picture boardrooms like that.
The other dude, Bruta, is like, attacks that woman in slow motion, and she just kind of, that shrinks back in horror, but doesn't actually.
I remember distinctly my mother when we were watching this when I was, again, 6 years old. I blame my mother.
Thanks, Mom.
But anyway, I remember her going, "Why didn't that girl just get up? She should get up and run." And now I just have to like add a Marvel no prize to it and go, "Oh, I don't know. She's probably under some kind of spell that's making her muscles move slowly. I don't know." I
think it's like, I think there's something to that actually.
There would have to,
like, yeah.
So we've begun to describe Count Yorga he wears his beautiful red smoking jacket. He doesn't lie about anything, you know. They'll ask him, they could have asked him way earlier in this film than they actually do. "Hey, are you a vampire?" And he probably would have said, "Absolutely," you know. What do you think about that? But
well, except that he was all about putting off the questions. Like when he was asking him all the questions, and he kept going, "Just one more question." It's like, okay, but you really got to go, get out of here. So like, do you believe in vampires? And he's like, yes. And he's like, okay, just one more question.
Oh, that was very clever. That's a whole sequence. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I love the weariness with which he has to put up with all of this. When they're asking, they're like, I've heard this and this, and he's like, this again.
Well, that's where a lot of the humor came in, and it's funny because sometimes the dialogue in this is fairly clumsy, but sometimes it's brilliant. And the scene where Count Yorga is putting up with a visit from all these humans who are just trying to distract him and keep him up, with their questions about folklore and vampires and the occult. And he's just so funny and clever and annoyed at them. And it's really it betrays this really this great talent for writing dialogue that you don't often find in a low budget movie. But let's go back to the beginning. This movie starts with a séance, which is kind of a groovy way to start. Oh, groovy, and that's what we're calling this retrospective.
We're on topic.
Yes, yes. It starts with a séance of a bunch of young people who are, they're sitting around a table in somebody's, living room, and Count Yorga is leading the séance, and he's trying to communicate with the mother of this girl, Donna, whose mother recently died. And we only learn after the whole scene that this guy was actually the lover of the girl's mother. And that's all confusing. It's interesting that the movie doesn't bother to introduce to us that connection at first. So at first all we see are just some 20-somethings in a séance led by this older, dapper gentleman who just has no patience whatsoever for the dorkiness of the young people who keep goofing off and making weird faces and, copying feels of their girlfriends and all this stuff, that's where they're not really paying attention to the business of the séance.
And I have to say, as somebody who's in their late 30s, and I have a lot of friends that are in their 20s, I totally understand how Count Yorga feels right here.
I mean, it's possible. You just slow down. You reach the point where you just don't. It's just not as funny to goof off all the time. But yeah, so that's where we open, and then the girl, he finally sort of. The whole idea is, won't you speak to us? Whatever the name of the mom was. Won't you speak to us? And finally, Donna screams, and then he sort of talks her down from her being hysterical, and he takes that moment to, we the audience learn immediately he has real magic, because he gives her a hypnotic suggestion where he says, I'm going to ask you to do some favors for me later, and you're going to do them. And so now we know, hey, he's magical. Mm-hmm. And he leaves.
He does that a lot.
Right. And he leaves, and now they find out, this guy, he was, Donna, one of the girls says, well, this guy was my mom's boyfriend, shortly before.
3 weeks before she died.
Yes. And so that's the introduction, and then immediately we get to one of the first scary scenes.
And by the way, he was the boyfriend, but he didn't show up for the funeral, and he insisted that they not cremate her.
Not cremate.
Oh, see, that's also, it's funny you bring that up. I also had a note that, the jerks that are the boyfriends make it really easy for Count Yorga. Because he's like,
that one guy, you can't wait for him to die. That one that's like total jerk to the poor girl.
Well, yeah, that's good. So Paul and Erica.
Yeah, Paul's the one who's the jerk. Yeah.
Paul and Erica give Yorga a ride back to his place, because I don't know how he got here. Maybe he took a cab. Anyway, he needs a ride back to his mansion. So they take him in their red VW microbus. And
Shaggin' wagon.
Right. they take him out to this mansion somewhere, who knows where, around Los Angeles. This is supposed to be. I literally have no idea where they are. But, it's down a long private drive that they have to go through a gate. They take him to his house. He's like, y'all want to come in? And Paul's like, no. And the girl's like, yeah, but no. So they drive back. But they only get a quarter mile down this private drive when they get stuck in the mud, and so they decide, all right, I guess we'll camp here overnight and have sex in the back of the van. That's
this is why, because it's got a bed, and of course, when's the last time you've seen somebody with a van who brought candles? Like, there's candles in their van. I mean, this is definitely part of the...
Drew's the one with the mobile studios. Drew, do you have candles in the van?
No, but I can always. There's always room in the future to bust out the candles.
But
I don't know. I don't know how the band would feel about there being wax everywhere, but this is what it is.
It's true.
This is part of what makes it groovy, the groovy horror retrospective, though, because instantly he's like, well, we're stuck. Well, let's, the next scene is them, it's a bed in the back with candles in it. Oh, man.
Literally
it's so
candles.
Good. I also love how her boyfriend, he's really, he knows what's going on. He's constantly like, no, I don't want to get this guy a ride. She's like, but he's so awesome. You should totally, he's like, man, why is my girl into this, older dude? And the whole time he's kind of a jerk about it. But he's and Yorga, plays it up. Oh, yeah, hey, you guys want to come in? No, we don't. I'm on to you. He gives him the look of, I know what you're doing, man. And he just keeps are you sure you don't want to come in? And she's like, this would be great. He's like, no, I think we should go in the shaggin' wagon and get out of here. But
the other thing I love
about the way it plays out.
The other thing that I love about this scene, because of this being, the particular point in time that this movie occupies, and this movie very literally has that up on the screen, is you seeing the transition of the Hammer style horror into almost the slasher movies that we get into in the late 70s and early 80s. This sequence very much could even be in one of the earlier Friday the 13th films. It's got that kind of vibe to it.
Absolutely.
Because after they've been making out for a while, first of all, there's a neat trick with the sound where the crickets and frogs get way, way, way louder.
Loud, yeah.
All of a sudden, they're really loud. So she hears that, and she goes. And it's like a 1, 2, 3. If I recall, she looks out the window. There's nothing there, and then she goes, Boyfriend says, "What's the matter, baby?" Because he's down there with the candles, and she's like, "Look out the window," and he looks out the window, nothing. Mm-hmm. And then she looks again, and Count Yorga is in the window. He's literally right up to the window, just looking at her, and it is so scary, but also so crazy. It's really weird and icky and gross.
Well, yeah,
this guy is just up against the window staring at them, and then of course. He's really just playing games with them, because as soon as that happens, he's like, okay, down to get to work, because he then, he drags the boyfriend out and socks him one, and then they, and then he attacks the girl, and then we cut. Did you guys have any more of this scene, or was that it? Because
I just love it. He's like, and now we do this, It's even more kind of mean. He doesn't kill him. It doesn't become that. He's like, yeah, I beat the crap out of you, and I vamped your girl.
Yes.
Take that. I'm Count Yorga. That's what I do.
Can I say Count Yorga has some of the gnarliest looking fangs in vampire movie history?
Yes.
Yeah,
awesome.
He does. He has a whole bunch of pointy little teeth, and he chews on you, and the chicks dig it. I mean, when he's making out with Erica later, he just kind of gnaws on her neck, and then gets blood all over her, and and she's into that.
They're always into that, though. That's the thing, is that all these vampire movies, they always totally make it that having your blood sucked is very sensual and erotic experience, which I guess is how it started out as softcore porn.
Well, it's possible there's some kind of poison that, again, to use a Marvel No Prize explanation, maybe there's something in the vampire saliva that actually sedates you or hypnotizes. I don't know. Well,
that's something that's actually been outright, an idea that's actually been outright used in some trashy vampire novels that I can't even remember because I've read scores of terrible vampire stories in my day, but I do remember that very idea has actually been used in some things.
That it's a sedative in the bite, in the saliva.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, that would make sense. I mean, also, there's also good old-fashioned sadomasochism. This notion that you feel alive because suddenly somebody has brought real pain and real. I mean, again, this is a total Hollywood Cinemaxy version of being alive and feeling pain, but that's definitely the kind of softcore thing that didn't even need this movie to be a softcore film to include. That was just very common, and it even goes all the way back to Lugosi, because he would bite the women and they would swoon and all of that stuff. But again, to Tony's point, that still doesn't make this guy romantic. It makes this guy a sexual,
he's a predator.
Yeah.
He's a user.
I think people confuse sexy with romantic a lot when talking about the vampire genre.
Mm-hmm.
I will agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the thing, to me, one good way to think about it is, do you regard the Marquis de Sade as romantic? And it's impossible to say yes. Sexy? Maybe. Not romantic. There's nothing about de Sade that
I think they have nothing to do with each other. Well, not nothing, but they have very little to do with each other, romantic and sexy. Because the thing is, the whole bad boy image that, so many women are drawn to, there's nothing romantic about it. You think of a romantic person, setting aside vampires for a minute, you think of a romantic person, you think of someone who gives you flowers and lights, sets up Christmas lights in the forest and hires a violinist. That is not the same thing as bad boy, like sulking, just dark, sexy. That's a different thing, and yet that, Right. So yes, a romantic person can be sexy, but you don't have to be romantic to be sexy for sure.
Right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So
that's what I'm here for.
There you go.
So, all right, next day, and Drew's right. This is basically, I think it is specifically, an adaptation of Dracula, because they do exactly, Lucy's the one the first girl is getting vamped. Lucy's getting vamped, so immediately we're going to start working on her. They start doing, they're checking up on her. They go see their friend, the doctor, the chain-smoking doctor of the 70s who's...
Oh, and he's great, too, because he's got, this really obvious, mini skirts and slacks are just in. That's part of the groovy part.
Yes.
He's got, it's okay, this, blonde chick. She doesn't really speak English, but, she's good at organizing things.
His nurse?
And she has
her name was
rat look like, oh, doctor, what else can I do with you? Yeah. And then his girlfriend, he has a type, of course, because later on his girlfriend, not exactly the brightest woman, not the brightest character, but just that doctor, he's the smartest guy, and he's also you get the impression he's kind of sleazy.
Yeah.
When he's not being the voice of reason, the women around him
he chooses this woman who is so Babette. He probably has a thing with Babette, and she is a complete ditz. And then this woman that is at his place later on is literally, I think maybe it's an actress doing a dumb actress. I hope, because it's she comes across like Lorraine Newman pretending to be an actress in an SNL skit. She has very wide eyes. She's, completely ditzy. It's a neat character.
Oh,
this is Dr. Hayes, and he's like, well, you're anemic. You need to go eat a lot of steaks. And very soon comes the scene that Joya was referencing, which is that as this girl has been slowly vamped, she gets slobbier and slobbier, which I find fascinating. First of all, before we get to the next one, what's that about? Why is it that as the girl becomes a vampire, she stops cleaning her apartment?
Yeah, because certainly the male vampires, I've never seen a movie that portrayed, Dracula or any other male vampire as being messy. They're always immaculate. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of like spiderwebby action going on, but other than that, everything always seems to be perfectly, put in. Everything has its place, and it's all very elegant. So I don't know why she's.
I think that's maybe one because you don't know what's happening. You're turning into a monster effectively. You don't really know what's going on. Maybe so you start to go a little nuts. And secondly, I mean, Yorga's a master vampire, and there's always, some movies make it literal, but in a lot of things it's just kind of below the surface. In vampires, there's definitely a hierarchy. There's the boss vampire, and then there's the underling vampires, and in the Dracula movies, the bride vampires are always underling vampires. They're not quite as human as Dracula is, like even in the novel Dracula, the brides of Dracula are more subhuman than Dracula himself. They're just these wanton things, and they take this to a more grungy, grotesque, sort of Grand Guignol level here, but it's
okay. I don't know.
Well,
remember that they're pretty well put to tell us the crazy Grand Guignol moment of this entire picture. Who shall it be? Drew, do you want to lay it on us, or Tony?
Go ahead.
I think I'll give it to Julia. Do you want to do it because you were talking about it already earlier?
Well, it's okay. So, do you like lasagna? do you like kittens? Well, there's a great scene in this movie for you.
Yeah, Rain came in when I was watching that, and I was like, she's like, is that a rat? And I was like,
don't look, baby.
Yeah. Sure.
No, I don't get it. I don't get why she decides that she has to eat the kittens.
No, but what happens? Tell us.
Well, it's fresh meat. I mean,
that's the thing is, like, they walk in, and there she is. What's her name again?
It's Erica.
Erica, yeah. Erica is like just has blood all over her face, and she is holding this kitten, and it has dead kitten, and it has just what? Well, it turns out it's lasagna when we found out later, all over it. But we're not supposed to know that. She is eating this kitten, and the men are, of course, duly horrified.
Well, and she looks up like she's got the kitten, and she's like, she looks up and goes, and she spits out a piece of it. And you're like, oh my God, and she's just like staring at them, and she's got blood. Like, it's the most groovy, disgusting, amazing scene. I mean, what?
Apparently, it's a real kitten. It's just sedated and it has lasagna all over it. So, I mean, I guess this is the era of, no animals were really harmed when making this movie. I mean, no animals were terribly harmed. Just
I don't know the first thing about kitten sedation or whether that can be done under a doctor.
Also, it doesn't sound sanitary. Eating lasagna off a cat.
Putting lasagna all over the little kitty. Wait, little white kitty.
He's like, why did you cover me in lasagna?
Because they read one too many Garfield cartoons.
Yes.
Apparently.
There you go. That's awesome.
But I mean,
also, well, now when we talk about her being like super sloppy, I'm guessing the thing is like that's the only live thing around, right, in her apartment.
Yeah.
So whatever. I mean, it's gross as hell though, and it's super bright red. Like they really amp the color on that. But also you'll notice though in Yorga's basement throne room, all the women in there are made up. Like, when he tells them to like sexy wrestle and make out, like they're all made up. Like when he's like, okay, this is fun time, but when they're turning, like he's not around, so they just like they're kind of grody. So
and that's very,
do you think he has Bruno do their hair and makeup?
That would be awesome. If he also has to make, Sean in the chat room was talking about how he wants to see him like shopping, but that would be also if he had to go shopping, he also had to buy their makeup. Like, is this for you, or what color do you think?
A smoking jacket.
Yeah. What color do you think would go with this complexion? Yours? Because I don't know if I can help that. No, this isn't for me. Okay.
That was not for me. I love
that would be awesome. I would love to see that short film.
Well, I was just thinking that there are ideas here that we do see elsewhere. Like, for instance, the Anne Rice, features, people getting turned into vampires. They get dug, they usually dig into the ground a foot or so, and they come out and they kind of stumble around. So that kind of makes sense. This idea that you have to be educated to be a vampire once you are turned into a vampire. And there's even the possibility that he could even possibly control how intelligent they get. Where extra amounts of blood or extra, who knows what kind of magic he's putting into these vampires so that they can either be zombie level or capable of making out with other vampires level or whatever. And so we don't know. I love, by the way, later on when he starts sicking vampires on people, they do just swarm like rats. I think it's when they attack Dr. Hayes. Like 3 female vampires come after him and just sort of land on him. And
it does feel very Night of the Living Dead when that stuff happens.
Yes, certainly in that instance. And Night of the Living Dead would be the best example of anything like this before this, because it's important to remember. Thank you for bringing that up. Night of the Living Dead is 1968. Okay, this is being filmed in 69 and 70. So really, Night of the Living Dead is just like last year for these guys. And absolutely, I think that's really important. There's not even a Dawn of the Dead yet. It's so strange to think of all the things you have to erase in order to understand like how you get this particular picture or another particular picture going along. So yes, after Erica has gone nuts with the cat, but they still try to save her. But what ends up? Does she just plumb disappear? I'm trying to remember what happens to her after they. She disappears. Yes, she goes off to be with Count Yorga because eventually she's become a vampire, just like Lucy. She's become a vampire, and she goes off to be with Count Yorga. So now Yorga turns his attention to Donna, the other girl, at the same time that the men decide that they're going to harass Count Yorga. And there's really only 3 sequences left.
What?
There's the first visit, the second visit, and then and the attack.
I like how they do a lot of VO work while they're just kind of wandering around the city, looking like 70s. Like I need to post it in also along with my recommendations, Fashion SWAT, because from Something Awful, because it just reminded me all the slacks and sweaters and 70s of them kind of just walking around, in the 70s. And they repeat this again later in the second movie, but I just thought it was funny that they're like, hey, let's talk about vampires. We carouse the city. Okay, I thought about going in today to my practice, but no, let's just walk around.
At one point, they're actually
that's
walking on a walk.
He is both the Dr. Seward stand-in and the Van Helsing stand-in.
No, of course. Yeah. Well, he talks about the other guy he learned from, who is like as if Van Helsing was a mentor who's away,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he definitely plays both characters in this movie, for sure.
Well, and I think also part of that is, you talk about him kind of having this Donald Draper vibe to him. I think that's part of like the cynicism of the day. Is like, if this was a Hammer movie, he'd be Peter Cushing, and he would be a great guy. But since this is tapped into like more of the 70s cultural zeitgeist, like I actually find him to be a fairly likable character.
I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything negative about the fact that this guy has a lot of girlfriends. I mean, it's 1970. That's just the way it is. I don't think we're intended to think of him as sleazy. He's just a regular guy who has a lot of girls. And
he's a little. I mean, he's a little sleazy. But he's also of a time.
But I mean, Jason
is
right though. Like, are we thinking of him as sleazy because we're looking back on him with like 21st century eyes, or is he literally they set him up to be sleazy? What?
No, I think that's definitely the case. Like he's like He's that guy from the 70s, and that was of a time, you know.
Well,
I think he was always lazy.
Well, and Joy, I mean, one thing that there is a possibility that it depends on who you're asking, because he and the other men talk about the women who are essentially the same age. These are all adult women, okay? These are all like women who are probably over 25, and they all talk about the women as though they are like 9-year-olds, and they don't involve any of the women in any of the conversations.
This is, I mean, the 70s, we're not, this is not the, 1800s. Women, we've just had the sexual revolution. This is civil rights movement has just happened. It's all flower power and whatever. I mean, all that stuff happened. So they don't, I think they're sleazy. I think they're jerks. I mean, I think there's plenty of very progressive, men who respect women and their rights, and these are not them.
But the early 70s were not like a feminist utopia. Let's not like.
No, but I'm just saying, there's plenty of men who are better than these guys, I think.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying it's easy to look back with a more cynical. And I do think
Steve Trevor.
Yeah. Well, Steve Trevor has, Wonder Woman would have taken Count Yorga apart, okay? She would have sorted that shit out on her own.
I definitely know, man, that guy's used it. Oh, by the way, I'm a doctor, more than a few times.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that the guys who made this movie probably thought he was a pretty cool guy.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think that there was I think they were trying to make I think that they weren't trying to make him sleazy. I think they were trying to a vampire hunter character in an older vampire movie would have been an old man, or at least an older guy than this, and would have been very scholarly in a very stodgy way. And I think they were trying to make their Van Helsing type character a little more contemporary and cool seeming. I don't think there was any judgment coming. And you could have done it from a judgmental standpoint and made this guy an oaf, and that would have been completely
you're
valid.
Right.
But I don't think that's going on here.
No. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a 70s man's man, right? That was the whole commercials. Commercials were all about that, right?
Yes.
Hey, guy, by the way, you wear these slacks, you get these chicks. Look at this. I mean, you can look at the landscape of 70s advertising. Right?
Yeah, he's going to be
this guy's totally in line with all of that.
Yeah.
Part and parcel. There's no doubt that exactly the character he's portraying. You're right. In retrospect, But I mean, more importantly, though, but aside from that, he's actually really pragmatic about it. I mean, he's the first one to go, hey, this could only be a vampire.
Yes.
Despite the fact that everybody else is what are you talking about?
Me saying this stuff is not meant as I within the context of the movie, I actually find him to be a very enjoyable character. I enjoy his back and forth with Robert Quarry is very entertaining to watch.
So before we get to that, I want to talk about that back and forth right now. I just wanted to mention, basically, I only bring it up, the fact that they talk about the women as children, because I think Drew's onto something that, at least in movies, and if you're not at Berkeley, I think the gender roles are just still stuck in the 50s and 60s in terms of pop culture like this, of exploitation movies. And I've seen lots of movies and TV from this particular era, and you've still got women in extremely traditional roles, and there's not a moment's thought given to that's not appropriate. That the men, for instance, should be involving the women in discussions about what exactly they're going to do about the vampire. Whereas if you wrote it today, the women would be in the living room with these guys going, boy, what's with that guy? And somebody would go, well, he's really, there'd be this discussion about what's going on. You couldn't do it today. But at the time, this kind of sexism is just the way middle-class people are, I think. And But somebody can write in and go, no, you're wrong. The middle class was way past that in 1970. I don't know. Okay.
I don't think they're necessarily past that now, so I doubt they were very far past.
Well, yeah, sexism is something that still is still very much. I mean, it may not be quite as blatant, but it's still very, very much alive and well.
It is blatant in some circles.
Yeah. Oh, well, like you and I on a time when we're not recording, we'll have to talk about the music industry and it's how sexist it is. But that's a topic for when we're not recording.
It's a really good topic. Okay, but let's get to Drew. Tell us a little bit about this sit-down conversation that the Doctor has with Count Yorga, because I think, short of the cat, this is probably one of the best sequences.
It is literally, like like this is like taking a page out of, something you'd see in a Universal, vampire movie where the vampire hunter and the master vampire sit down and they have a conversation, and they all show up because they're gonna try and find
stakes in their hand.
Yeah. They all show up, and then, the Doctor sits down and is distracting Count Yorga with all these jabbing questions about the occult.
Very well at all.
What now?
I don't think they thought this plan through very well at all, really.
No, it seems it seems like subpar Scooby-Doo planning, but the resulting back and forth is really really great. The way he he does come across like a belligerent house guest that just doesn't want to leave.
Yeah.
But
I like how they show me asking, like, well, what time is it? Oh, it's 4:30. Hey, we should stick around though, right? And you're like, who comes up, like, no, even if he wasn't a vampire, like, nobody's like, hey, thanks for coming over at, whatever, 3 a.m. or whatever. Yeah, just
well, not to mention, he's like liquoring them up and then trying to get them back out on the road.
Yeah.
You know that song that that's like, what time is it? 4:30. That's a Spin Doctor song. I always, like, whenever it's 4:30, or I always wish it would be 4:30 because whenever anybody asks me what time it is, so he goes, do you happen to have time? And he goes, 4:30. And I was like, damn it. Because then, like, 5 minutes later, he goes, what time is it? And he goes, 4:35. I'm like, damn it.
I also like the other part where they didn't think it out, where he goes, like, oh, yeah. So the whole point is to distract him for long enough until the sun comes up.
Yeah.
But at some point they go, so Count Yorga, we've been having this whole thing where we know you're a vampire and we know like, but here's the thing, sun's gonna be up soon, huh? Like, don't play your hand, dummy. Like, yes,
the great
this, but like, don't just come out like, hey, by the way, we're stonewalling just to let you. Like, it was
But the great thing about this is that Robert Quarry plays this in a way that Yorga's had to deal with this particular idea of ploy before. He even is like, well, the intelligence of a vampire is far more powerful than that of a mere mortal.
I love how he just throws it in their face. By the way, you guys, ants. I'm just going to lay that out there for you.
Well, and
I'm way smarter than any of you. So keep going, but you're an idiot. Like, his eye rolling and his, like, just super smooth, man, I've been here. Why are you guys even trying kind of attitude is amazing. That's what I love about this character so much.
But
I love that they, like, Julie was talking about him. They ask him about werewolves, which segues into the vampires later. Like, you say that to me, and I'm immediately wondering about the unseen Paul Naschy Paul Naschy werewolf versus Count Yorga movie that we never got to see because he talks about seeing werewolves.
Oh, man, I would love to see that. That'd be cool. Especially man, he's just so cool. Like, he's just so, like...
With Fire Shark?
Yeah, keep trying. I really know exactly what you're doing. So, and I'm so much better. In fact, that's kind of where he goes wrong, is he completely underestimates humans. And, the Doctor is actually, he's pretty smart. Although
he is pretty smart, but the way they win is not that impressive. It's not like. Yeah. But before we get to the winning, I want to mention there's one more of these conversations though, because there's that one where he finally goes, oh, "Geez, you guys are losers. I'm going to bed," and he goes to bed, and that's, oh well, I guess that whole attempt is blown. That's amazing, by the way. That was their big plan. Keep him awake by asking him questions about folklore. That didn't work. Well, by the way, Nosferatu, she makes out with him all night, to get it.
Exactly. Which is, I think probably way more likely to work, especially for a guy like Yorga. Let's not forget, though, also his other plan. He's such a smart guy who does such dumb things. His other plan is to call the police and go, "Hey, I know where there's a vampire," because his girlfriend says, "Hey, there was a baby murdered," and it sounds like, and it ends up sounding like a vampire. Instead of going, "Hey, that vampire-sounding guy, I think I know who the murderer is." Not, I know a Dracula.
And not only does he do it then, but then he does it again later.
No, just call him up and go, "I think I have a lead on that murderer." That guy's crazy. I mean, he thinks he's a vampire. But no, he doesn't go that. He doesn't go, he thinks, he goes, "Hey, I know a vampire. You guys come out for a vampire?"
Well, he's not the first one to do this. He's the 48th one to call his vampire.
Well, somebody also made this wonderful comment. This was actually in the Overlook Film Encyclopedia, which has a very psychological bent on a lot of these pictures, and it said that in this movie, everybody is sort of self-conscious about what they're dealing with. I had a thought about. This is also how we deal with real predators in real life. When they go back, so both of these conversations, he goes back, he's carrying a stake in his hands. He's sitting there, and they're talking. These guys are so embarrassed by the notion that this guy's a real vampire, even when they're talking to him, that it's almost too much for them to bear. In the same way that, if you knew that this person talking to you was a serial rapist or something, you almost, that there's such huge societal weight on not attacking people, and not condemning them, even when they're horribly wrong, that, they have this tendency to, they almost don't want to say vampire aloud, even though everybody knows it. And it's really great and such a huge relief later on when Yorga is holding the stake that the guy brought over to his house and still has been talking to him for 5 minutes, and then he just sort of shrugs his shoulders and goes, "Do we have to keep pretending that?"
Yeah. It's so good because he comes over. He's like, "Okay, you were going to use this, right? So I've been alive all this time, and you serious this is what you bring over, broken up steak that you sharpen." Whatever. Okay, I guess we're gonna do this. He's just so world weary, and just it's so perfect.
Well, and then the big plan was just to yell out his buddy's name for a while. I'm not sure exactly how that went wrong.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, when Yorga sicks so there's that second conversation. It's really great. But then the doctor is outnumbered. And so he starts calling for his friend, and Yorga just starts making fun of him. And that's great. It's really unnerving, because the vampire ladies are coming after him, and he's yelling, "Michael!" And Yorga's like, "Michael!" It's really, I don't know. It's kind of cool to see the fact that Yorga has a bunch of cruel streak in him. He's a bad dude. I also kind of think it's funny that these guys with their intellect, again, the doctor's a smart guy, but his whole plan involves, "Listen, Michael, we're going to take a nap now because we've been up all night. You set your alarm, and you call me when you get up, and then we'll go kill the vampire when we still got just an hour of sunlight left," which doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. And then that whole plan is magnificently thwarted by the thrall girlfriend just simply turning off the alarm clock. That was the big plan, is, a 75-cent West Clocks alarm clock that they probably got at Piggly Wiggly that, it was set for 4:30, and the girlfriend just sort of turns it off on the way out to go meet Count Yorga. So that's the superior intellect that they are going to take against Count Yorga. So can somebody explain to me how they managed to kill Count Yorga? Because I don't understand it. I mean,
Did they?
Oh, yes. Remember, Yorga comes running out of... so the doctor's dead, all right? And Michael has gone upstairs.
Michael kills the zombie sidekick guy.
Yeah.
And then Yorga's in the upstairs and trots out the now vampirized mother of the one girl.
Yeah.
And then Michael comes in and confronts him. Yorga kind of says, enough of this stuff. And I love it that he just throws the mom after he just made this big production of like trotting her out for the daughter. Like, oh, well, she's a vampire. You should hang out with us and be a vampire. You know, like he makes a big production of that and then just throws her on the stake so he can get some running time ahead of the hero.
Right, and they very, very slowly deteriorate into ash or whatever, and then. But what Jason was saying was that once. Well, okay, I don't want to skip to the end, but anyway, that's why I said did they? Because yes, they did kill him for now. But in all the Dracula movies, there's always some way to bring them back by dripping like vampire blood on them or something.
Yeah, I can only think that's why that would be the only reason that that Yorga would actually allow himself to be killed would be, because he dies way too easily. So he seems to be
genuinely surprised that he gets, staked. Like, that was the weird part is again, it goes back to, I think is almost like he thinks that they're so beneath them. They aren't even peasants, like I said, they're ants, that there's just no way. He's lived all this time.
Yeah.
He does look kind of genuinely surprised. Whether that's a fake out or not, it goes,
Well, I think in the context of the movie, we're supposed to buy that he gets killed, and it seems to be a complete accident. He just sort of runs for Michael, and Michael's holding a stake, and so he accidentally stabs himself on the stake that Michael's holding. That's, which is really kind of a letdown from all the, you guys are handsome and brilliant. But whatever. That's
Well, Michael doesn't get away though, because he takes the girl. He's trying to get the girlfriend out, and then he opens up the door to see that the other two vampire girlfriends are still alive and kicking, and then he shuts the door quickly, only to find out that his girlfriend is a vampire and she chomps down on him.
Yeah.
So it's not like Michael gets away.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that's so. Yeah, in the end, there's kind of a downer because basically Yorga's dead, but everybody else is dead too. And you got these 3 vampire women in this castle, who are going to hang out and I guess go make other vampires. And
Well, by the time we come to the second one can assume that they help bring you back. That's the
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
The deal.
With a spell, they got all of his ashes there and everything. So, God, well, I'm afraid we've been going for enough time that we really need to get on to our final thoughts about this movie. But so let's do it this way. Let's do our final thoughts. But if you want to introduce any new thesis that you feel like we haven't hit on, I think that's totally fair, and we should do it. So, all right. It was Drew first, right?
Yeah.
So it was Drew, Tony, Joya. Yeah. So Drew, final thoughts and anything that we might have missed or to look out for, because I don't want you to feel like I'm giving this movie short shrift.
I feel like that when you first said groovy horror, this is one of the first movies that I actually thought. The first one obviously was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which we did a few weeks back, but this was one of the other movies that I thought about because it has. Again, it perfectly covers this period of time and the transition of where the horror genre is going. Because this movie, it's steeped in this sort of traditional vampire iconography with like the capes and the coffins and the candles and all that stuff. But it also has this sort of cynical 1970s quality to it, and I really do feel like that's important, and it's such aside from that, as far as final thoughts go, it's such a fun movie. If you're a fan of vampire movies and you haven't seen this, it's really worth your time to hunt it down and to watch it, because especially if you've seen a lot of vampire movies, you can see a lot of the stuff that came before this in this movie, but also a lot of stuff that came after it. You can see the influence of this movie on movies that came, vampire movies that came out, other vampire movies that came out in the 70s, and certainly a lot of vampire movies that came out in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And by the way, you mentioned the 70s, and several people in the chat room were mentioning Vampire Circus, which I think the way that this is connected very much to that is just, that 70s vibe of mixing sexiness and gore and cynicism and everything that you mentioned. Tony, final thoughts, Count Yorga, Vampire.
Yeah, I agree with Drew. Also, there's Dracula 1972, which,
yes.
Would fit definitely. I really like this movie, and I'm sad that I didn't see it before I fixed that since, of course, since we're talking about it, but I wish I had seen this long ago. I really like this version of, I think he plays it to the hilt of a timeless vampire lord. There's none of the, I'm so sick of I'm so surprised that the world has changed. By this time, he's not surprised because he's seen it all, right? Yeah. He's been through the Industrial Revolution. He's been through all this stuff. He just, whenever he comes to a place, he's, again, back to that force of nature. Max, who's been on here, was talking about Palance's performance as Dracula that we've gone over. And I think it's not quite that, but that power of just run at things and choke them, and then when you're not doing that, just being totally dismissive as far as humanity goes. I think he plays it to the hilt, and I think it's wonderful for all the flaws the movie may have. As far as it's kind of a B movie, but I think that for all of its flaws, it has a lot of really awesome stuff, and I think Yorga himself is the biggest part of that. I just love that take on the character. I would love to see more of that, and we're going to do the sequel, but I would like to see more vampires like that, because I think that's something we don't see enough of these days.
I'd like to see an iMovie kind of mashup video of just these running vampires to some sort of I don't know what, but I mean because it's so innovative, and it made me realize that we don't see vampires run a lot, and it just works fantastically. Julia, final thoughts, Count Yorga.
Well, I think it's not just kind of a B movie. I think it's definitely a B movie, but because it's just, it's not, I don't know, I feel like there's some neat parts, but it's very, very much relying on, scantily clad lesbian vampire women and a sexy vampire and a bloody kitten. So, I mean, it's not, it's not the
all the stuff
classiest
of, all the stuff of, that wins Academy Awards, is what you're saying.
Right, exactly. The Oscar. Did you know that this did win the Oscar for Best Picture that year? I don't know if you were aware. No, so, it's a little schlocky, but, it was kind of entertaining. I honestly, I probably will not remember that I watched it come next year, because that's just what I am. So I don't think it made a huge impression on me, but it wasn't, I don't hate it or anything. So.
Well, and the great thing is, next week we're going to be coming back for Count Yorga, for the second one, Turning Count Yorga. Yeah. So it'll also give us a chance to sort of assess the entire, the whole sort of Count Yorga subgenre that defined itself and maybe didn't continue, but and like Sean in the chat room says, it just holds up really well. And that's my final thought, because we're going to be back next week and we will talk about this some more. I'm so glad that we watched this. Well, no, one more thought. I just want to see more of the running vampires. I think they're fantastic.
Just one of those 10 hours of Count Yorga running at things, like one of those YouTube That'd be awesome.
It reminds me. The girls reminded me of Manos Hands of Fate. You know, where the women like just kind of wave people to death.
You know, there's something to that. There's a lot of Manos the Hands of Fate here. You know, there's the Torgo-like servant. There's the master. There's all the women. You know, and Manos.
Oh man, there you go.
Yorga.
Yorga meets the master versus Frankenstein and werewolf.
Yes,
and Fire.
Well, you know, they were. Somebody even brought this up on the Facebook. They were going to do Dr. Fives versus Count Yorga, and I weep that did not actually end up happening. And in our day and age of resurrecting lost projects as comic book miniseries, I think somebody needs to get the rights to both of those characters and do the comic.
That would be
all these AIP licenses anyway. I mean,
I want that comic to happen too, because they're so perfectly matched as far as their disdain for the rest of humanity and just their one-upness of it, where everybody else would be pawns. Okay, Jason, again with Fire Shark. There's our next. I think I think everyone on this podcast, we should pool our resources and try to make this a book, because that would be awesome.
I think I agree that Yorga versus Fives. Well, that means we really need to do Fives next, so that we've got all 4 of those movies fresh in our mind.
Fives is so good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love his assistant too. She was where it was at.
Volnavia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
she's
okay.
super mod.
She was indeed, yeah. Okay, so we should do endorsements, in fact. Same direction. Drew, I don't know if you have anything for us this week, and I've got to remind myself of what in the world I've managed to absorb in the past week. Thanksgiving has happened, and that may have been the only thing I absorbed. So,
well, we all absorbed some extra calories.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I'm still absorbing them. We still have leftovers that I am absorbing on a daily basis.
Yeah, if anybody wants an enormous amount of mashed potatoes, come on over.
Come to Colorado. We have mashed potatoes.
There's no snow. See, it's no snowmaking. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Means something.
I think I'm going to once again, especially in light of doing this movie, I'm going to once again endorse Penny Dreadful, because I think that if you enjoyed Count Yorga, you would get a lot out of that show. And I know it's an enormous success story, so Lord knows it probably doesn't need my endorsement or anything, but I just found it really enjoyable, and I plan on actually purchasing it for myself. I rented it, and I think I'm actually going to go out and buy it first chance I get, because I really dug it. I think it was a quality done show with real affection towards gothic horror instead of I just read an article today about what the Universal execs are saying they're going to do with the Universal monsters, and it's nice to see that someone still gets it a little bit, with as far as the classic monsters go. Although as far as self-centered endorsements, this coming Wednesday on Comixology, we have the release of the new issue of Halloween Man. That's going to be the start of a new story arc, and it is about vampires, so it is timely, and I think there's a lot of Count Yorga in the bad guy of the story arc. I think people who enjoyed this movie will get a lot out of our vampire lord in this story. So please check that out, and let me know what you think about that on the Facebook, because I know quite a few of our listeners read the comic. I enjoy hearing feedback on that as well as feedback on the show. So that's all I got this week.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Let's see. Tony, did you have any endorsements for us this week?
Yeah, my self-serving one is that for the next until Wednesday, our CD, our Deserts of Mars CD transmission is on sale for $5, as well as 1 penny shipping from CD Baby. So we're doing that. I'll post that. That's a 3-day kind of Cyber Monday thing that CD Baby is doing, and they're our physical CD distributor. Them along with in Europe, Ozium Records. So we're doing that. I also made it through because we had a free preview. Made it through True Detective, which was really pretty awesome. I don't know if it was as amazing as as it had been hyped, but it was pretty close. It's hard to top Breaking Bad for me. So but man, it was riveting, and I really dug it. So that, and I'm going to have to also post this whole 70s thing has made me think again of Something Awful's Fashion SWAT, where they make fun of 70s fashion catalogs. And I'm going to have to post all of those in a thread because it really fits with this, especially these two movies. So, but yeah, those are my endorsements, and I'll post them.
Very cool. Very cool. Julia, did you have any endorsements for us this week?
Well, we've been enjoying Newsroom, which is, I guess, coming to an end. So if you like West Wing and other Aaron Sorkin shows, you should catch up on some back episodes of Newsroom and watch the last couple episodes as they come out in the next couple months here. It's a fun. I don't know why more people aren't watching it. It's a good show.
It's funny. Okay. Well, I'll second that endorsement actually this week. I think Newsroom is one of the best written shows on TV, and I think basically it's just yet another one of those things where I believe that people were so enamored of the way Aaron Sorkin wrote West Wing that they've just never quite gotten over that there will never be another West Wing by him, which is to say he was at his most ideal because all of his characters take everything they do so extraordinarily seriously, and then he puts comedy into it, then anything short of being in the White House looks like an insane parody because it doesn't make any sense if people take stuff as seriously as they do. And so none of his other pictures or shows have been as successful because they're like, why are these writers of an SNL-style show always acting as though the whole world is depending on this? And it's because that's the way his characters act. So it fit in the West Wing. It fits less well in Studio 60 and in Sports Night to some extent and in Newsroom, but it doesn't matter because it's still some of the best writing on TV. So I really love this show, and it's going to come to an end in just a few more episodes, and there will be no more Newsroom to kick around anymore. So I'm enjoying it. I totally recommend that. So great. All right. Tell you what, guys, we're going to be back next week to talk about more Count Yorga and to also talk about the whole Count Yorga universe, maybe AIP and all the wonders that they wrought. So stick around. If you're listening, come to the Facebook page, leave comments, argue with us, suggest different theses from the ones that we suggested, disagree with what we came up with. We totally want to hear from you, and we will talk.
I have to say, a lot of the people expressing disdain about the terror on the Facebook group is actually very nice because a lot of the times when we review movies, even when we thrash a movie, people are always like, "Oh, you're being a little too hard on that movie." I loved seeing that there was actually some legitimate reasons, but people on the Facebook expressing their very passionate feelings, even though they were negative.
Well, and I have to think really carefully when people say, because it makes me really wonder where my values lie, because people will point out, they'll say, I don't like the terror because it's so exploitative, it just took, it's just out to make a buck. And it makes you stop and think, is it worth my mind to start, to spend my time on something that's so clearly intended just to take advantage of a financial opportunity? And yet, thereof a lot of great entertainment is born. But you're right, great conversations on the Facebook page. Guys, if you're listening and you haven't left us a review on iTunes, leave us a review on iTunes. And here's my challenge. We are in the middle of a wonderful Count Yorga retrospective. Go get a friend and make them listen and say, this is when you need to jump on to the Castle of Horror podcast because we want to make more friends. Thanks, everyone. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to be back next week. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Yeah, and thanks again for Sean and everybody for joining us. That was really awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Night.
Bye.